We already knew offensive line was going to be a major need for the New Orleans Saints, and now it's a whole lot bigger because James Hurst is no longer in the picture.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Vogel, and as always, we're brought to you by Scott Fickner, Injury Lawyers, and Crystal. Before we talk about the NFL draft, because I do plan on having a little episode to preview it and kind of give my final predictions as to what I think will happen in the first round. And then we'll throw the second round too, because pick 45 is going to be important. We got to talk about the big news this Wednesday regarding the Saints, and that is James Hurst announcing his retirement. I didn't have this on my bingo card. I'm going to be honest. But when James Hurst reworked his contract and kind of took a pay cut, I figured that was his way of just saying, hey, I might just be a depth piece this year. I might just be a rotational player. So I'll get my money. It won't be as much, but it seems like a fair agreement. Well, it comes out this Wednesday on Instagram that he announces his retirement. He had a whole post about it, thanked his thanked his teammates, thanked his coaches, thanked his wife, his family. Really good stuff from James Hurst, honestly. I would go give it a read if I were you guys. Just go to his Instagram and check it out. Just a really detailed explanation about his decision, how much he loves football, how he's entering an unknown chapter of his life. And obviously that's going to be difficult to navigate, as it would be for a lot of people when you leave a profession that you've been around for years. For the Saints, though, this is really, really, really do or die time coming up with this draft. Because this news for James Hurst, while on one hand, you want to focus on the player, right? And say, hey, he was versatile. He gave them a couple good years. And I commend James Hurst for that, right? You could have played him at left tackle, left guard. The Saints moved him around the old line, and there were some good moments. There were some okay moments, but the guy always gave you versatility, and you do value that for offensive linemen in the NFL. Always value that. So shout out to James Hurst. He was a really, really nice piece for them in terms of role players. But now you look at this Saints offensive line, and you wonder how are they going to be competent come week one of the NFL season? And I'm not here to sound the alarms on April 24th. I don't want to do that. But if I were to look at the Saints roster right now, I think they have two offensive linemen they could trust. And those two are Eric McCoy, who we know is very reliable, and Cesar Ruiz, who has shown he can be good, but the consistency isn't there. Outside of those two, where is the production coming from on the offensive line? I think it's the most dire question to ask for this Saints team at this very moment.
I need to clear something up about New Orleans. While our culinary scene might be on fire, our food has never been about heat. It's always been about flavor. And this is how New Orleans does flavor. Are we clear? Crystal. How New Orleans does flavor.
Biggest issue for the Saints is offensive tackle. You don't have either one, right? Like some teams got bookend offensive tackles. The Saints, you don't have either one. You don't know what Trevor Penning is. You'd love to see him develop, but we haven't even seen him on the football field. So how are we supposed to expect him to develop properly? On the other side, we have a guy who, when healthy, can play really good football. That's Ryan Ramczyk. But do you fully expect Ryan Ramczyk to play good football? I don't expect him to play any football. And if you are someone who does kind of stay in the know of what's going on with the Saints, especially from certain reports going around, I'm not going to give away that person's scoop. But my belief from reading that scoop is Ryan Ramczyk's going to retire soon. It might be after the draft. So you will lose Ramczyk to retirement potentially. You did lose Hurst to retirement. You don't have Pete anymore. I would give him a phone call right away. I don't care if it sounds like a desperate thing. You need depth and you need versatility. Pete fills those two needs. Outside of that, this is a problem, guys. This is a huge, huge problem. And when you need a left tackle, you need a left guard, you need a right tackle, and you only got two picks in the top, 100 pretty much for the Saints? How are you supposed to figure this out for a team that hasn't been drafting well of late? So, again, I'm not trying to sound the alarms, but the Saints need offensive line help. And I think James Hurst's retirement today is just another kind of indicator that you may want them to go receiver. I may sit here and say I love Brock Bowers, but push comes to shove, they're going to have to go O-line at 14. If they stay at 14, who the hell knows? I'll talk about that in a future podcast. But yet again, guys, I want to keep the focus real briefly on James Hurst and wish him all the best in retirement. playing in the NFL. God knows how tough it is. God knows how much more physical it is when you're dealing it in the trenches like he did. So shout out to James Hurst for the Saints. They got some work to do, and we'll figure it out, and we'll cover it here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.